you buy 4 Infinitread radials, Goodyear's longest wearing passenger tire. That's $40 on 4 Goodyear Infinitreads. But hurry, this Goodyear offer ends soon.
The Budweiser 200. This ABC Sports exclusive brought to you by Budweiser, official sponsor of the 1996 U.S. Olympic team. This Bud's for you. Bosch Platinum, the ultimate spark plug. Toyota Motorsports, our minds are always racing. And Goodyear, #1 in tires.
Well, while we've been away, a couple of things have happened. You'll notice that Scott Pruitt has dropped back in the field. He got a wheel up over one of the curbs here, and here it is as Vassar was pressuring him, and he just lost it.
Well, I think I saw something in it. Don't forget, right prior to that, we had seen right there on the car on the left-hand side, see the oil in the middle of the track, right there, that little shiny spot. He just got in the oil, got it around a little bit wide, did a great job of catching, and I think that came from Raul Boesel's car, you see in the top of the screen with the flash.
Yeah, and that is one of the other things that happened. Raul Boesel apparently had an engine problem and pulled off the course. Gary?
Well, it was certainly not a case of anything bottoming for Bryan Herta. The bodywork is off. The car is in the pits. Billy Camphausen, the lead official for IndyCar, came running up immediately as they started to service the car, and he said, no, this car will not be able to leave. We don't know what's happened, if they've broken a seal or something, but it's very hot back there, and the crew is investigating right now. But here's another tough break for a driver who had a great place to start this race from the second row. Jack?
Gary, let's update you on Paul Tracy. He did bump start his car, got back onto pit road. Team Penske went and took a look at the rear wing area. Now, they had this wing out of the canvas bag ready to replace it because on Tracy's, on the right side flap, it was broken away. But Chuck Sprague made the determination that they would rather not suffer the penalty for having to change the wing, and the penalty would have been losing track position, valuable time, and most likely a lap. So they simply sent Tracy back out, wounded wing and all.
So there are a couple of the issues here in the early going. 11 laps are complete. The scheduled distance here is 98 laps. And we keep an eye on Greg Moore, who suddenly slows down himself and turns down in the pits. Interesting situation here at the start. A bunch of mechanicals. Boy, exciting here in the early laps with everything that's happened. Everybody seems to have problems. He almost looked like he was making an attempt to pass Al Unser Jr. there, and the next thing you know, he's in the pits and coming in very slowly. That's way under the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. And coming in just behind, it looks like Paul Tracy is back for a visit once again. So maybe that bounce against the wall did a lot more than they originally thought. Paul Tracy, who was very much a contender. It's Zanardi, Vassar, Ribeiro, and then Gilles de Ferran, then Scott Pruitt has dropped back to 5th place. Greg Moore, pretty slow movement there. Yeah, when they're playing with that rear body cover like that, they want to look underneath. You got a serious problem. On board with Parker Johnstone. This gives you a good idea of the circuit here as they make a turn through the corners that bring them out onto the front stretch. And Danny, maybe you can take us around. Okay, well, they just came through a fairly quick corner. They're coming onto the straight. That's 3rd gear. They accelerate up into top gear here, and you'll see them going down into this early chicane there. This is really tricky because it's concrete, a little bit rough. You see his head bouncing around, and now you see the pavement change right there onto asphalt. Accelerate up, very quick corner here. Quick there, and this is where Jimmy Vassar, Scott Pruitt got on the oil right there. Accelerate up into a slower corner here, drop it down a gear. Hard on the gas. Now this is an important corner because it's complex because it comes onto the back straightaway. Little right, little left, and another little right, and it's all flat out because it depends on what the car is doing, how smoothly you get out there. Very fast left and right complex there. Do that in 5th gear. Down here into 3rd or 4th, depending on how they have it geared, and accelerate up through the gears. See those dark clouds overhead? I'm sure they don't enjoy looking at those. They could very much figure into the mix. 1.95 miles around, most of them to the right. Emerson Fittipaldi closing up on the back of Parker Johnstone now. Well, Paul Tracy may have more trouble than we originally thought, Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, the wounded wing wasn't the problem. In fact, it didn't break the rear quarter, the lower wishbone, until you went back out.
Yeah, you know, I just screwed up and slid off the track and hit the tire barrier, and the wing was torn up, but then after a couple laps, it must have been the lower wishbone that was fractured, and it gave up. It's disappointing for the Marlboro crew. I feel like an idiot, but you know, we'll go on to Cleveland and see how we do there.
Well, in your defense, Danny Sullivan and the team up in the booth reported there might have been some oil out in that area from Raul Boesel.
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what happened. I slid off the track and nobody else did, so you know, it's disappointing for our team, but hopefully we can turn it around at Cleveland.
Say what you want, guys. It's awfully tough for a driver to shoulder the blame by himself.
Well, his teammate, Al Unser Jr., there you see him started 12th and is now 6th, just behind Scott Pruitt. Robbie Gordon started 14th and is now 8th, but Al Unser Jr. is definitely challenging on Scott Pruitt's car. We had indicated the problems, and you saw them with Greg Moore. Here's Gary Gerould.
Yeah, disappointment seems to be an early theme in this race for any number of drivers. The rookie Greg Moore has been sitting here for some time now, and they're methodically working their way through the right side pod, changing all the electronic components that they can. They don't know a specific reason, but the engine just died. They've about completed that task. They'll soon find out if anything will get them back here to soldier through some laps for the rest of the afternoon, Paul.
Well, we're watching Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt.
You know, Paul, one of the things I'm thinking about Scott Pruitt, when he slid, he went across that curve. Those are raised a little bit. I wonder if he upset the balance in that car a little bit, because he was still in front of Andre Ribeiro. He lost one spot to Jimmy Vasser, but he's dropped back quite substantially since that time. I wonder if he's knocked the balance out a little bit on that car.
You hearing me?
And of course, when we saw him get up and over that curve, that's exactly what I was mentioning. Lost it in the oil, then jumped across it, and who knows what that does to the under tray of the car or the handling. So Al Unser Jr. works at the back of Pruitt, battle for 5th place at the top. Nothing changes. Zanardi is the leader. His teammate Jimmy Vasser, the points leader, has moved into 2nd place. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Bryan Herta, we were hoping that this would be a day when better fortune would shine on you. This has been a tough season. Were they able to pinpoint the problem?
Well, it has been a tough season, Gary, and you know, we were looking around, but we couldn't tell exactly where the oil was coming out of the engine, and you know, there's no point in putting a car out on the track that's going to put oil down, because it's just going to make it dangerous for everyone else out there. So best thing is to take the shell car back to the truck and see if we can figure out what happened.
We'll see you in Cleveland.
You will.
Bryan Herta.
Al Unser Jr. continues to work on Scott Pruitt as they've just flashed across the line. 17 laps complete here in Portland. You know, what I'm wondering, if we're having a bunch of little electrical problems, in fact, I was asking Richard Buck, who is the crew chief for Al Unser Jr. right there, this morning, when you run in that heavy a downpour as they did, what do you do about electrical connections? Do you try and get them apart and cleaned out? He said most of them are military and therefore are fairly not affected at all, in fact, by the wet, but there are a couple that are not, so you try and get them as clear as you can. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, as you watch this spirited contest between Al Unser Jr. trying to overtake Scott Pruitt, you are absolutely right, Danny Sullivan. Pruitt's car has gone way, way loose. They seem to think, as you do, that it was by going over the barrier. Right now, Scott says, I don't know if I can hold on to this thing. They said back out of it a little bit. We'll make the changes. We want to go to the fuel window. Should be about lap 31. Got plenty of horsepower down the straightaway, though, guys.
It's turned out to be a fairly even battle here. Ford Cosworth versus Mercedes-Benz, as 17 laps complete in the Budweiser 200, and Zanardi has led right from the green.
Enter the Performance Zone with Splitfire Performance V spark plugs.
You get your passing gear, you're gone.
The difference in gas mileage has been fantastic.
Splitfire Performance V spark plugs mean better performance, more horsepower, and better mileage. So say the experts and the people who use them.
They're the best plugs I ever put in my car.
Enter the Performance Zone only with Splitfire Performance V's, guaranteed.
Every few years, the world gathers to witness an unparalleled sports spectacle, the Truckathlon. And to compete, you have to have a Ford Ranger 4x4, because you'll need its switch-on four-wheel drive for truck long jump. It's four-wheel anti-lock brakes for truck discus. And it's whopping 4-liter V6 for truck hurdles. The Ford Ranger 4x4. You can't win without one.
Next event, truck pole vault. Yes!
Before cars had phones, cup holders, or even roofs, Mobil Oil was there. When Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, Mobil was on board. Mobil was in the world's first minivans, in the first space shuttle, and in the tanks of Desert Storm. So if you think that all oils are alike, think about something. At Mobil, we've been changing oil for over 125 years.
The new Kawasaki Vulcan 1500 Classic, with the biggest V-twin ever to hit the asphalt. You've never felt anything like it.
We're back at the Budweiser 200, Portland International Raceway, and this fight continues between Pruitt and Unser Jr. for 5th. Gary Gerould?
Greg Moore and the car have come back under the canopy here at the transporter. What proved to be the problem?
Some kind of electronics failure. I'm not sure exactly what it was. It seems like the same kind of thing that happened to us in Rio, but it's too bad for the whole Players Forsyth team. You know, we were running not too bad. Our plan was just to run around the middle of the race until the middle of the race, and you know, make sure that the car was there at the end, because this race seems to take the best of them and took us today.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
Yeah, he's got a lot of go-karting on this track. In fact, he said maybe over 20,000 miles of go-karting here. That is his 4th DNF of the year, and that's after a perfect season in the Indy Lights last year, taking him to the championship.
Well, you see here, the second car in this, the red and white one, of course, is Al Jr. still trying to find a way past Scott Pruitt. This is a tough track with a fast car to pass. What I think he's doing right now is he's trying to force Scott to make a mistake, because he appears Scott seems to have the measure of him, or at least be equal or a little bit better on the straightaway. The ideal spot is, of course, at the end of the straightaway to try to outbrake him. But I think right now Al's just trying to force him into a mistake.
Beautiful view as they make that curve down the backstretch here.
See, and Al's not close enough there to really get underneath him. Plus, that's a slight touch of the brakes in 5th gear. Now, where he wants it is right here. He tries to get in close underneath him, but Scott Pruitt seems to pull out just enough there that he can hold him off. And then, of course, we'll see Scott here. He comes down and he'll move over a little bit in the middle.
Yeah, but let's look just ahead. See, those tires are beginning to shine. We're also getting a couple of rain reports from the spotters out on the course. You can't tell anything on the circuit yet.
No, and they've got enough heat in those tires right now to not worry about that until it really starts sprinkling enough to cover the surface.
So Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. battle for 5th place. Right ahead of them is the battle that is beginning to develop between Andre Ribeiro and Gil de Ferran for 3rd at the same time. The leader is still Zanardi. 2nd place, his teammate, Jimmy Vasser. Well, look at Al there. Al's
closer. He's closer.
Nope.
But that's such a fast corner there. You only lightly touch the brakes in 5th, but he really wants him to know he's there. He's trying to get him to make a mistake. Where he wants to run fast is out of this corner. If he can stay up underneath him here and stay close, he can have a shot into that chicane. He's close, but I don't know if it's close enough. He's going to look. Scott protected that in a nice way.
Boy, look at this.